Hey there, Lisa here. Welcome to my channel. I hope you'll join me in my love of crafting and DIYs and hit that subscribe button. Today's projects are all about spring. It is part of a collaboration, which I'll tell you more about here in a little bit, but first let's get right into the projects. For this project, we're going to make a decorative glass round for the table. You'll need a round glass cutting board from the Dollar Tree. They're the smooth ones. Tissue paper, Mod Podge, a brush to apply the Mod Podge, sandpaper, and hot glue. And it should cost you right around $2.50. I had the tissue paper already and the cutting board, so it was actually free. First up, I cut a piece of tissue paper to fit on the round. And then I removed the little feet off of it. And with some glass cleaner and a razor blade, I took off the glue that was left behind from the feet there. And then I applied a coat of Mod Podge. A good coat, not super thick. And then I applied my tissue paper upside down. I did smooth it out just a little bit. And then I applied a coat of Mod Podge over the top once it was stuck down good. And then once it had dried, I cut around, trimmed off the excess, and then I took a sanding block and sanded at a downward motion to get those edges off and nice and smooth. And then I took a damp paper towel and just cleaned off any dust. And finally, I did another coat of the Mod Podge, paying close attention to the edges. I just wanted to make sure that the edges were good and secure after I had sanded them, because there was one area that started to come up a little bit. Then once it was dry, I attached the feet to the bottom with some hot glue. This would be the back side of the tissue paper. The front side of your tissue paper is going to show through up through the glass. I hope that makes sense. And that's it. All done. This is such a simple project, but I absolutely love it. Granted, I'm a little bit obsessed with this tissue paper. This project is a mini bird nest in a mini terracotta pot. So you will need a mini terracotta pot. They come in a set of 2, so it costs you 75 cents. Stiffened burlap or cardboard. You could also use pipe cleaners, Spanish moss, Play-Doh, and paint. Total cost for this was $2. And I actually had it all, so once again, I just crafted from my stash. The first thing I did was take these stiffened strips of burlap that I had left over from another project, and I glued the 3 pieces together and then trimmed them and then sort of just shaped them into a nest shape, I guess. And then I took the Spanish moss and glued some on the back around the edge and on the top. And then I robbed my kids' Play-Doh and I made 3 little egg shapes out of some Play-Doh. It hardens nice and good, and I didn't have any modeling clay. And then I gave them a light coat of this really pretty blue. And I put them in the cup and did it, and then I did have to add a little bit of brushwork on top there. And finally, the last thing I did was I glued in my little eggs. You could use rocks, you could use jelly beans, you could use modeling clay, you could use just about anything to make little eggs for your nest. And then I just trimmed it up a little bit just so that it showed its shape. Then I hot glued it inside the terracotta pot. And here you go. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. This video is part of the 5 Under 5 collaboration that is hosted each month. And this month's theme is Spring Fling. Now to introduce our lovely hosts. We have Missy over at the Crafty Cove, as well as Emily over at Farm Charm Chic. These 2 ladies host this fun collaboration each month. Be sure to hop over and see their channels. And this month, the guest host is Mary Beth over at MB Gray Designs. All channels, as well as the playlist, will be linked in my description box. For this project, we're going to make a little bunny terrarium. To complete this project, you'll need a little ceramic bunny from the Dollar Tree, paint, a terrarium, foliage, a decorative cap, and moss. Again, I had all this stuff on hand. but it would cost you roughly $4.25 if you had to purchase. So the first thing I did, they make two different kinds of these bunnies. One of them has a metal hanger and you can just pull it out and it works great. This one did not, so I had to take my little saw and saw off thing for the string. And then I gave it a good coat of the terracotta paint color. And then I pulled off just some foliage, greenery, I suppose that they call it. And I was initially going to try and make a little plant, but it was too tall. So I actually just took it all apart and I just stuffed them down in there. I didn't even glue them or anything. I just stuffed them in there. And then I felt like it needed something in the center. So I took this grass I had and cut it down and just put a little bit of it right in the center and called it good. That was my greenery. And then I just added some Spanish moss and then the bunny. And that's it. What do you think? Really simple project. This is my Dollar Tree glitter bird makeover. You will need a Dollar Tree bird. This was a little foam guy covered in glitter, a decorative cap, tissue paper, Mod Podge, hot glue gun, and paint. The only thing that I actually purchased for this project was the Dollar Tree bird, but I figured you probably wouldn't have decorative caps on hand, so they work out to be 50 cents a piece. Total cost, $1.75. So the first thing I did was dismantle my bird, and as I was dismantling it, I realized that this glitter just peels off of these leaves here. And so it was kind of fun. So I started peeling and I started thinking, well, I kind of like it the way it is. And so I peeled it and rinsed off the glitter. And then I gave the glittered bird a coat of white paint. And I grabbed a detail brush to do around his eyes and around the clip. Although later I ended up taking the clip off, so I could have avoided that. But I did give it one coat and then I went and gave it another coat. Mostly I just wanted to make sure that that glitter would stay put. You'll notice I got smart and clipped the bird on a paintbrush. That made painting it way easier than trying to hold it the first go around. Next, I took the tissue paper that I wanted to Mod Podge on, cut it out. You know, I've always just used scissors for this, but I've watched people do this where they wet it and then tear it. Gives it a more natural look, I suppose, than sharp edges from scissors. I'm undecided whether it makes a big difference on something this small. And anyways, once I had it all cut out, some that I thought I might use, I went ahead and applied some Mod Podge to the back of the piece of tissue paper, and then I applied it to the bird. I don't worry about wrinkles because I think that they kind of add character and I like the texture. However, if you are worried about wrinkles, you can add little snips in the tissue paper so that it lays nice and flat around the curves in the bird, if that makes sense. And then I just sort of went around and applied where I liked the look of it and the combination. And once again, I would just apply a little Mod Podge to the back of the tissue paper, stick it on, and then apply Mod Podge over the top. And then at the very end, I got really intricate here and cut out just teeny tiny little leaves because I wanted his head and face to have some green on it. It was looking too white to me. The tail that I had cleaned glitter off of, and I glued it together and then just glued it in the hole that was already there. I apologize, it went off camera there. And then what I did was I took a decorative cap and I whitewashed it, glued the bird to it. And then I added a little bit of antique wax just so it would match everything else that I was doing. And that's it. What do you think? I really like this little guy. This project is a little butterfly setter. So you will need an MDF butterfly. I picked this one up at the Dollar Tree, a square dowel, or something. You could use blocks or whatever to make a stand for it. Caulking, a stencil, paint, and antique wax. I had everything except the butterfly. So this cost me $1.25, $2.92 if you bought everything. So the first thing I did was I took my little square dowel and I cut it down to size for the butterfly. And then I took and sanded that rough edge and gave it a coat of antique wax that I applied with a baby wipe. Then I gave the butterfly a coat of white paint. I actually did the edges and the front and the back, as I was initially going to make this a double-sided, and then I didn't end up doing the other side, but I may someday. And then I did have to give it another coat, and so same thing, front, back, sides, a full another coat of the white paint. Then I took and gave it a light sanding, and then I used a baby wipe and antique wax and just applied it all over. I wanted it to look really, really antiqued. Then I took this stencil and applied it to the butterfly, and using caulking, I spread it on the stencil and then I scraped it off, getting it as even as I could. And then I took and glued the butterfly to my stand I had made. And I was concerned that this would not keep it standing up, but I wanted to try it anyways because I wanted the least amount of stand as possible. So what I did is I took another of those square dowels and just cut some ends for it, and then I sanded the rough edges and glued those on. I lost the footage somehow, but I glued them on and then put antique wax on them. And then I took a Q-tip and applied antique wax around the caulking once it had dried. I just wanted the edges to be really dark, and I found that using my finger worked best. So I would just apply it with a Q-tip on the edges and then sort of rub it off the actual caulking so that it was at least lighter there. And then here I am going through and sort of trying to wipe a little bit more antique wax, excuse me, off the inside there, just so that the dark edges really stood out. My butterfly fell off while I was doing that because I kept putting pressure the wrong way. So I glued it all back together. And here it is. What do you think? I am pretty happy with the way that these 5 projects came together. It's just so green and fresh, and it screams spring to me. It was really a lot of fun to put together. I sure hope you have enjoyed today's project. I would love to hear in the comments which is your favorite, and if you anticipate making any of these. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today to spend watching this. If you enjoyed the video, I hope that you will give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends, as well as subscribe to see more. Thanks so much. Again, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe.